And we're back inside the famous Noman green screen hangar here live for day 2 of the ZBrush Summit. I'm Louis Tucci on behalf of Pixelogic. It's been, some people would say a storm of a morning, but I'm going to call it a blizzard, is basically how it's been going. Holy smoke, the stuff writes itself. I have, again, the pleasure of sitting now with some really talented guys who just gave a wonderful presentation. We had to wait a little bit. They were giving away everything in the kitchen sink. We're sitting back here waiting for the prizes. The people at home are happy, of course. They're tapping on the keyboards as if they're here. And we are sitting with Shannon Thomas. That would be you.
That is me.
Michael Vicente. I said that correctly?
Yep, that's perfect.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
And Paul Warzecha. Man, I'm getting better and better by the day here, guys. So let's talk a little bit about the energy inside the room. You had a packed house. I mean, I want to draw attention to one thing that most people didn't get to see probably was Seth Thompson didn't even have a seat. He had to take a knee at the front on the floor. How can you describe that electric energy and how did that make you feel?
Me personally, that was incredible, really. It was awesome to see that many people turn out for it.
To the brim, like out the door.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was kind of hard to see with the lights, but every once in a while I could see someone would come in and like, holy cow, there's just silhouettes of heads everywhere, so.
If we had a sound check, it'd be like, right now they would input like, blinded by the light.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
But man, it was just awesome to reach so many people.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael? Senhor Vicente. In Portuguese. Queres falar português?
Eu posso falar português.
He can do it in Portuguese for all the people at home waiting to
Maybe I
hear
won't.
him from Lisbon. All the people at home smiling and.
Yeah, no, my English got better than my Portuguese.
So what do you think? You want to do it in Portuguese?
No, that's fine. No, that was awesome. Like, I was kind of nervous because it's the first time I do this kind of stuff, but I think it went great. I wish I could see more people because the screen was very high.
Okay, fair enough.
But no, that was really cool.
I just wanted to stop as well and commend you on your selection of jackets.
Yeah, I was inspired by yours. I was like, I need to bring
I
mine.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. Right. From one guy to another, here we go. And then finally down the line, we have Paul Warzecha. I got a soft spot for this guy. We'll get into that in a minute. How do you describe the experience of sitting here inside the green screen hangar, the famous Noman School of Visual Effects?
I mean, it was awesome. It was awesome to be on this side of the stage this time. I mean, it's terribly humbling and mildly frightening, but I mean, it was freaking cool. And you're right, it was a packed house. And how many Orb fans were there out there today?
I had no idea. I mean, I knew there were fans, but I didn't know that it was going to be like that. And I certainly, there's something to be said about that. You know, in a collection.
I didn't know any of those people. No, that was a great welcoming. That was awesome. I wasn't expecting that.
It's quite something. So we'll jump in with you then first.
Okay.
You have this name, Orb.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. If you're asking, I just like the word. I
You just
think
like
it's
the
short
word.
and-
Even just the Orb pack, perhaps, maybe we can link it to that on,
Yeah, it
on the
just means
ZBrush Central
something.
forum. That you,
Yeah, that's.
is that how it started? In all seriousness.
Yeah. It's just started with some brushes I made on the previous company I was in France.
Okay.
And we were doing a lot of stylized work, and we had a lot of references like Darksiders, Borderlands, these kind of games.
Right.
And I really wanted to make some kind of like, you know, those stylized slashes and lines and things like that. And I just like experimented with some brushes, and I came up with this brush that I started using it all the time, and just eventually shared it, and that's pretty much how it started.
But the name Orb didn't really mean anything. It was just
No,
kind of like
it was
something you
basically just my online name. Like
Right.
Orb was kind of, it was just a word that I chose because I like how it sounds. It's short and easy, so it's just since it's just my online name, it just became Orb.
Yeah, as an extension of that
Yeah.
pseudo self or that that
Yep.
secondary character. Let me ask you a question while you have the microphone. Lots of people think that that you're French, but we've come to know that
Yes.
you're actually Portuguese.
Yeah, blood-wise, I'm Portuguese.
Yeah, so you're born just south of Lisbon, you were saying?
No, I was born in France.
Ah, okay.
My parents are Portuguese.
Your parents are Portuguese.
Unfortunately, I lost all my Portuguese.
Yeah, we have
like-
this experience here. It's language loss is a real
Yeah.
thing, and my Italian is slipping away every moment
it's
that passes.
horrible. Like when my grandmother calls me,
Yeah.
I speak English to her. Like English words come before Portuguese.
Yeah, takes me a moment when I go back to Toronto to visit. Let me ask you then, in that sense, describe your adjustment to living in America. You're living here now, right?
Yeah.
You're not working remotely. You live here, and you're part of the team. Discuss your experience in your adjustment living in America and working with some of the industry's most highly regarded men and women.
Okay, so that was a huge change for me. First thing is I didn't talk English when I came here.
Wow, no kidding.
No, yeah, my English was a video game English. Like I literally learned. No, it's
You were
true.
laughing. That's frightening.
I literally learned English playing Left 4 Dead, the game Left 4 Dead.
You were playing left-footed, you said? And
Yeah.
That's where you learned how to speak
And that's
English?
how I learned my basic English. Like, just things like go straight ahead, like things like that, forklift, weird words, things like this. So it kind of helped. And also, actually, that's kind of funny. I learned a lot of English looking at GNOME DVDs as well.
Really?
Like, I learned ZBrush just like watching tutorials, and actually all those DVDs. Like, I had a better technical English than just a regular
Yeah.
life-to-life.
More sort of formal English
yeah.
rather than street slang.
Yeah. And
Which
the
is
life
probably
here
better
is
for you.
great.
So you're enjoying
really like
yourself.
it. Yeah, that's awesome.
The weather's not so bad too, right?
Yeah, the only thing is there's no seasons.
Yeah,
So the
that-
time flies super fast. We
Don't you find it awkward in October when it's October and you realize somebody says to you, "Oh, Halloween's coming"? And
Yeah,
you
exactly.
think, it is.
It's never rainy. It's never snowing.
Right.
I miss that part from France.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I missed the winters in Toronto. I'm gonna leave that there. But let's go now and ask you another question. How did you get started in Europe? I'm sorry, I have you on the hot seat right now. Let's continue to.
Okay.
You know,
How did
grill
I
the guy.
started?
Yeah, how'd you get started? I mean,
I actually started playing with ZBrush 2.
okay.
Like just as a like I did an art college. It wasn't 3D, just like 2D, like 2D art
This is
college.
in France.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I started learning ZBrush on the side, just on my own.
Right.
And it's like the first thing I did was like a head, like a dinosaur head,
Right.
and I was just like blown away of like, did I really make that? It's like it felt like just insane for someone who never did 3D to make actually like something that actually looks almost like something.
So it was a head.
Yeah, it was a head.
Can I just say that the first thing I ever did was also, I think, in ZBrush 3, and it was for whatever reason, when I'm Canadian, obviously, it was a Richard Nixon cartoon. I was like, why am I sculpting Richard Nixon? This is obviously something's gone terribly wrong. They've infiltrated my mind.
No, I just did a Tyrannosaur.
But speaking of resources, I want to ask you three then in that regard. To what extent does Z Classroom play a role in sometimes exposing you to new features at all? Do you have maybe something you want to add about that? I mean,
I kind of mentioned it before in my talk that even as a professional working for like 6 or 7 years, I kind of fell off the ZBrush game for a little bit.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment here.
And
a
there was a
second,
lot of improvements that were made. So when I came back to the States, I was like, all right, I got to relearn this. Because I learned it in school back in 3, then kind of stopped using it for a number of years. So I literally would just watch, as many hours. I'll be at work, like working on something, and I'd also be listening or watching videos. So like Joseph's videos.
He's
going
great.
with like the ghillie suit. Like I learned so much stuff from that.
He's a great narrator. I like his.
Yeah, he's a very good workflow, and so I actually learned in the industry as I'm still working a lot from it.
So it's proven to be an invaluable resource,
totally-
along with this stuff behind us, which needs
Yeah.
no. This place needs no introduction. This is
In school we had a few of these.
the haloed ground.
Yeah. So in a way, like I don't know, almost everybody in a way I think is somewhat self-taught.
Yeah.
Because you're always just learning from the community and sharing things, and like you're saying, even though like you don't know these people, but like everyone's workflow has improved because of these things that you made. So it's really cool how it's all cyclical.
Pick something up from here, you get something from there,
Yeah,
you hear
just
something
one
at a
little thing.
conference.
Yeah.
I remember so many years ago, I remember the guys were doing a demo from, I believe it was Sony, and they were saying how, they were using masking in certain ways to generate. Not everybody does that. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like this one little trick, and such a wonderful little trick.
Yeah, one little thing, you never know where you
Yeah.
get it. That could, you watch a 10-minute video and you're like, one thing in that, saves me hours of work over the next years that I'm going to be doing this. So
I think you were doing that demonstration on the extractions with the masking as well. It's like I
it's a
thoroughly
simple
say
little thing, but
same deal.
Yeah, like
it
it
seems simple, but it's very
it's like
long.
it works. And it saves me hours and hours of work in production, which is the goal.
That's what I tell my students to say. You just have to load something. I mean, just get some geometry in there and make a
And play
mask,
with
and then
it.
just get on with it. And
Yeah.
that's I think the magic of that. Someone asked me that one time in an interview. They said, "What's your favorite feature?" They come to the brand manager at the time for the software, expecting some like hoity-toity answer, and I said masking, and I think they thought I was being, insert expletive, but I was being sincere.
Yeah.
And I think they didn't
Yeah.
understand what I meant by the.
It changed everything.
Yeah, I don't
poly
think they-
grouping, like it's such a simple thing. I mean, you could do face sets in Maya or Max,
Yeah.
but it's not as quick and it's not as. It opens up so many other windows that you can do.
Like
So-
one kind of action can proliferate through the whole software.
Yeah,
too.
and
It's
then you
like-
think about every asset that you make for this show, for this year, for the next year,
Yeah.
and your whole team, and it
I'm
changes a
glad
lot.
to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Let me just switch this up a second here, Shannon Thomas. You've got lots of credits.
Yeah.
But
I got pretty lucky in my career so far.
yeah, I mean, you got this guy, right? You guys work with this guy here. Oh man.
Just another guy.
But before all the lights and cameras, talk to us about yourself before all the lights and cameras. I mean, you've worked on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through all the
super
stuff because we'll be here all day.
I mean, before I got into 3D,
Yeah.
I actually was going to be a veterinarian.
Well, I was going to come to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Since you were a vet, actually. Yeah.
Well, I was technically a vet technician, so basically
Close
a male
enough for
nurse,
rock
like
and roll.
a, you know, Gaylord Fokker kind of male nurse.
Listen,
But-
the third guitarist in the Rolling Stones is still a guitarist in the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Man. I mean,
So I wanted to do that, but then I got a degree, so I have a pre-vet degree, and I worked in Florida for a number of years as a vet
cool.
tech, and then I just decided, you know what, I don't know if this is exactly what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 23 at the time, and then I think Lord of the Rings came out,
Yeah.
and it had always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to work on movies.
okay.
And then I saw that, and I was like, you know what, this is going to open up so many avenues of work, because if it was like a super successful fantasy film.
That
And I
was
thought,
fantastic, by the way.
yeah, I mean, this guy.
That's not the first kind of genre
those
I'm getting
guys-
into watching either.
Yeah, those guys did such a good job, and it was kind of like a game changer. Everybody has their movie,
Yeah.
or Star Wars, Jurassic Park, The Matrix. There's a number of them, and I love all those. But that one to me was like, all right, now I want to try to do something that I've always wanted to do before I get too old and say, oh, I wish I would have done that.
What aspect of it do you think was the driving point? What was the moment in that film that actually solidified it for you?
I mean, had always loved the books. It was just how successful they executed everything, that it was believable. And then for me, I didn't really even know what modeling or any of this stuff was. Like, I went to school, but I had this extreme anatomy background from doing all the pre-vet stuff.
Yeah, all the pre-vet
So
stuff.
it was like a great transition for me, where I just, we go to first drawing 101, like, what's this bone? And it's like, I know that one. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, look, I know this stuff. But then when we got to Maya and everything, I was a total newbie, so I didn't know anything.
Probably better for you in the long run. That's how I started as well. I had no idea. I was like coming from a very different background as well.
Yeah. And
Something
I
to
think
be said about that.
It helped as well. I already had a degree, so I think I was in a better mindset
Yeah.
than like someone right out of high school that was like maybe more into a lot of different things, where I knew I want to work in film 100%. That's all I did. Like,
Do you remember Willow? Any of you
Yes.
remember Willow? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I think the dudes on the horses, I mean, it was like that one dude. It was like,
and the transformation scenes are still,
just think of these guys on these horses, Maybe I'm just leaning towards a conversation on Westerns, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I think that I think you're right. Everyone has that pivotal kind of film, and
Yeah, and it's fun too. Like, I was going to say it in there, I forgot. It's fun to go to a place like this and you meet a lot of professionals. It's always fun to hear people, just ask them what's their story, how did they get in?
Yeah.
Because some people went to the best art schools, some people are self-taught 100%, some people were architects, or it's just
accountants, lawyers. Man, I've
random.
run the gamut. I've talked to guys you would never believe were doing what they say they were doing. You're like, are you joking me?
Yeah,
This
and
guy
they're
was doing what?
fantastic
You were doing
artists.
what?
Yeah.
Like, I remember in Portugal not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, I was with Serge Barreau, who's become a very dear friend of mine. He was telling me he was like a lawyer in another life. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and not only that, but like people from all over the world. I mean, every country. We used to have this stat thing at Weta where I would list all the countries that were represented at the studio, and it was like 70 countries. I mean, it was crazy. There was somebody from almost every.
When were you there at Weta? You were there some time ago.
06 to 2012.
So there was a friend of mine from Toronto that introduced me to ZBrush, who worked at Weta as well. He'd come back after after Avatar, after they had wrapped on Avatar.
Yeah.
So it was
Probably would have worked. I mean,
Yeah,
there was 2,000 people at one
yeah,
point
it's
there. So
tough to gauge everybody.
sometimes it's like, oh, I sat next to that guy, and sometimes like,
Right? Walking around taking names, right? Hey, you.
Yeah.
Let me ask, and so then, you've answered the question expertly. What shifted gears? Well, you saw the film and you wanted to get on with it.
But it was more of a personal thing too. At that point, I wasn't really happy in my career,
Right.
and I was like, I can always fall back on this, but I want to give it a shot before I don't want to be the guy that was looking back and say, oh man, I really wish I could have tried that out, but I never did. So
Yeah. I'd like to say something about that before I forget. It's very important if you're watching at home and you're a younger viewer, or if you're someone who's questioning the leap of faith. This whole program started with Andrew Kars, who needs no introduction in the world of anatomy. The entire program started with him being very candid and talking about some uncertainties and leaping and just not really having any sort of certain plan, but leaping forward and saying, I'm going to do this. So all of the experiences that people are gaining or having are going to find their way into their next project. There's no wasted opportunities. Like, you didn't waste any time. You were learning about anatomy.
I learned a ton, and
you
I
transferred
learned
that
how to
anatomy.
learn. I learned how to work with people, time management, things like that carried over a lot.
Absolutely. So I'm pleased to hear you say that. Now we're going to move over to Paul Warzecha.
Yeah.
You're a Canuck. I'm a Canuck. Enough said. let's roll. So, it's like a family at this point. Nice T-shirt, by the way. It's almost like a
thank you.
Luigi. It looks like a Banksy Luigi. And I'd like to draw attention to that shirt for 1 second. Do you know what it's like to grow up at a time when Super Mario is at the high point of its popularity and be named Luigi? And have to go to school and show up and be like, oh yeah, like the second player that nobody, yeah, where's Mario? Or, oh yeah, like the one nobody wants to play with.
Aw.
Nice, thank you.
He's got his following now.
Yeah, he does actually. He's cooler, faster, quicker, right? This is all I always remember.
He's a little more in shape.
Yeah, and he was always a little, he was a little, a little leaner. So, where in God's earth did you get the name Bird?
Okay, so it was
Can we talk
animation
about it on
school.
camera?
Yeah, no. It's just a real geeky story, but basically, I went to animation school up at Sheridan, just outside of Toronto.
Okay.
So I went for classical animation.
Should be noted, the famous Sheridan College.
So, there you go.
Should be-
Well,
yeah.
it was pencils and flipping paper, right?
Okay, the
Back
old
in those
way.
days.
Yeah, in the Stone Age.
So yeah. And so we all played Tekken back in the day, and
Yes, we did,
that's
didn't
right. So I would play Paul Phoenix.
Okay.
When you go to animation school, you get caricatures made of yourself.
Yeah.
So the caricatures started popping up where my hair was getting ridiculous. Like it started to look like Paul Phoenix.
we? Did you have the little
It-
tinkle, the
It was,
frosties?
it was bad.
Oh man, here we go.
So, anyways, no, I think this was back before they were doing that.
Okay.
Like this was old school Tekken. So, anyways, yeah, caricatures started popping up. My last name being Warzecha became the War Bird. In these pictures of me in this fighting pose, and eventually it shortened to Bird. And I started posting online as the Bird.
So that
way
was-
back, and it just stuck.
This is, as the nicknames go, I'll tell you off camera about the unfortunate circumstance where a kid in the neighborhood where I come from got a very precarious nickname, and unfortunately it stuck with him through adulthood, and he was being introduced as it to women in bars, and it was just very awkward as things kept going. But, so you're classically trained in animation, and that started at the Sheridan College. Talk about that lineage, and a lot of people don't realize there is a history of classical and traditional animation in Canada that runs very deep, actually, if you really think about this industry and think about animation really from a historical standpoint. And I'm not just trying to wave the red, the red and white flag here. It's an actual sort of thing that it is embedded in our culture in some way that for some reason we just have very strong animation roots.
Yeah, I mean the National Film Board of Canada did all that old stuff, like the
Log
I think it's
Riders Waltz.
or what was it? All the UPA stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many good people that kind of came out of that time.
Do you remember that advertisement, the Log Riders Waltz?
What's that?
Remember that commercial they used to run from time to time on public television up there? He used to say, it goes burling down and down white water.
Oh, my
That's
God.
how the log rider
Dude, I just got
learns to
chills.
step lively. It's burling down.
Yeah,
It's the most wonderful
so
sort of
amazing.
surrealistic animation of these logs. And for those of you that know what I'm saying. No, you can speak to it because you remember the animation.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? I mean, this was something that you...
It was awesome. I mean, the fact is like that was when I started to get into some of this stuff, like it was kind of before video games were a thing, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, I remember when I went there, I remember the idea was, the message that you got was, yeah, video games will be what you do if you can't get into film.
That's
Like,
right.
that was the mentality back in
Absolutely.
those days. And poly counts were so tiny. The talent pool, is like there were programmers doing art. I mean, it was not like it's nothing.
A
like
handful
what
of
it is
people,
today.
it's fair to say a handful of people were doing it. And at the same time, in those days, we're talking about maybe like pre 8-bit explosion, maybe into the beginning of the 8-bit explosion, early middle 80s maybe?
This would have been actually early 90s.
Okay,
like
so the
when-
16-bit sort of console
Yeah, it was like things were actually starting to make the transition into 3D, right? It was kind of
Right.
like Final Fantasy, like back when Final Fantasy made their first 3D
Man, I just want to
transition.
say, this game, this Final Fantasy business has been a running theme on this program, from yourselves to everyone so far. And I mentioned this to the guys yesterday who were from Square Enix. I said, do you have any idea the sort of implications that the brand you're working on has, for the people who are here?
Dude, it was the first game I remember sitting in the basement playing for 5 days straight.
Thank you.
Just about every other NES game, and I mean, I'm definitely dating myself now. But
Please, carry on. I wanted to get to this anyway.
But the NES, like every game, I mean, I had a list, and I mean, talk about nerdy, right? Like, I collected that list, and that was one of the only games that took longer than 2 days straight, and it was
Yeah.
5 days of just nonstop.
That thing
of
just
the
stayed on.
first Final Fantasy.
Yeah, you got your family telling you, "Come on, it's time to eat," and you just leave it on. You know,
Yeah.
so running
Yeah,
up
that
the
was
running up
awesome.
the electrical bills. What are the games from that 8-bit era? Can you harken back to and say that they were sort of influential for you?
Well, obviously Mario, right? And Mario 3, like that was the game that we would actually get we would get the Japanese version with the converter. So
Are they trying to give it? What are you doing? Yeah, no,
No.
we're going to keep going. Yeah, whatever. No, don't worry about that guy. But pay no attention to the man behind the camera. This is the Tucci show now.
Yeah.
I'm taking over.
Contra.
Contra
So,
was epic. Are you
yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah, pretty
What
much
about-
anything by Konami, Capcom.
Up,
know.
up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. I will
Everybody knows
never.
it.
It's like I should just get that tattooed on my arm.
Yep.
People who know, they know, right? But here's the thing. What about Rolling Thunder? Do you remember that Tengen classic, Rolling Thunder?
Right. You know, it wasn't a big one for me.
Just a
to be honest.
strange take. I actually like to go back and think of that as a very strange derivative of like Shinobi.
Oh, yeah.
If we can,
Shinobi was great. but
Thompson's behind the
I was
camera nodding, yes,
I was
look
the
at
Nintendo guy, not a Sega guy, as to be frank. Like,
listen,
but-
you know what? My neighbor had the Sega. I'm with you. I had a Nintendo.
yeah, and you'd trade, right? You'd trade
I
consoles.
just go over to their
right?
house. I wouldn't even. I
that's
don't
true,
trust
too.
that guy with my console. He's you kidding me? I walk down the street. But the other one was, I would say, probably. Well, the water is actually leaking below our feet here. That's probably why they want us out of here. Any other ones that stick out in your mind at present?
Oh man,
Super Dodgeball,
Super Dodgeball, absolutely.
classic.
Yeah.
That's a. He's not. He's
Yeah,
like, yes,
yeah,
this
yeah.
guy. I know my
Dude,
stuff.
How
man.
about some rock and roll racing?
Okay,
Some
listen.
Lost Vikings. Come on.
We could go on all day. They're giving me the spinning wheel, the finger of death. I want to talk about character development and what people should be working towards. And I'm going to frame this in a way for all three of you. I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about it in such a way that we address narrative, and I want to talk about it in a way that addresses how you come to terms with working inside of a pre-established world but remain creative. For me, that would be like a very high point of discussion where a lot of people could take a lot of value from your experiences. So think about that for half a second. Whoever wants to take it first. Talking about being creative inside a pre-existing universe. You know, we're talking about some very established brands. And there are people, making decisions, and you're sort of in this experience trying to continue to make this world entertaining and engaging, but at the same time be creative within those confines. Let's talk a little bit about that. Do you want to take the lead?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, like specifically on the Diablo team, and I would say every team at Blizzard works a little bit different,
Yeah,
obviously.
fair point.
But one of the really important things that we established, especially when we were working on Reaper of Souls, was working in these strike teams. So getting somebody from every discipline into that room, and by getting everybody together, you were able to make changes like on the fly, and you're jamming. And it wasn't this waterfall style, like make this, now
Top
you
down.
make this, and
Yeah.
you make this. By the time you get to the end, the animators are like, I guess we're doing this, but man, it sure would be nice if those arms were a little shorter or whatever. And so by having that collaborative approach, really it allows everybody to kind of speak up and voice their concerns or just put their fingerprint on it, which has
Okay.
been like awesome. So.
That's a very progressive approach. I'd like to commend all the men and women at the company for taking that approach, because I've been sort of working towards my master's degree this year in education. We're trying to see if we can't supplant ideas like that with fellow collaborators. I don't even call them students anymore. I'm teaching so much and sort of reframing the idea of it being a very sort of even playing field where the ideas are coming from not top and bottom, but from a sort of universal space. So that's nice to hear. What about you? Do you think, before we conclude here, because they are definitely spinning fingers behind the camera.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, jam sessions are super important. For me, it would be also two words like paintovers and also bringing like game designers. Like we always like go back and forth with the game designers. Every time we make something, we make sure it sells what they want to. It just like this. It just like translates what they want to sell, like idea wise. And we also make paintovers on everything. Like every time we make something, we make a paintover. We show it to the concept artists. Sometimes they do a concept as well, and we just go back and forth until like they just like validate that it fits the style. Cool. But we can go really creative on anything as long as we respect some rules that we all kind of agree, like chunky edges, chunky angles. But then, I mean, on Heroes of the Storm, it's a bit different because we're like the luckiest team at Blizzard. We can work on every game.
I've been hearing about that. You fortunate little guy, you.
Yeah.
A little bit more liberty.
And like I show on the talk, we in the environment side we can make some characters as well. So as long as you talk with the character artists, the leads, and they all just approve everything you do and make paint overs and make sure it just fits, everything just goes pretty smooth.
Okay, cool. You want to add to that, or?
I'll just say briefly, like pick your battles too. Like sometimes you get concept art that is like, hey, this is locked. I want this angle exactly how it's drawn, and sometimes
Totally
it's
cool.
like, just here's another character we did, make one that looks like it. So it's you have to kind of get your limits of when you're gonna be more creative than when you're not.
It's about being on a team as well.
Yeah.
After all, you know, you're going to play the fourth line. We know this from playing hockey. You also play hockey.
Yeah.
Red Wings.
Penguins.
Yeah, right. That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, I'm
Anyway,
from Pittsburgh, though. It's
won't
not like
get
a bandwagon
We're not
thing.
going to get into that business.
Yeah.
I was at Game 7 when they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Forget it. I don't want to even talk
Oh,
about
that was a good day.
They have given the spinning finger of death. I want to thank the guys on behalf of myself, Louis Tucci. I'm here with Shannon Thomas, Michael Vicente, and Paul Warzecha. Correct? The bird. I got the bird, the orb, and, well, Shannon, that's just, here we are.
Just me, yeah.
Just old Shannon. So from the Tooch, the bird, the orb, and Shannon, I want to bring it back to the main screen here inside the Noman School of Visual Effects for the ZBrush Summit 2016. We are rolling. It's been actually people would say a cold morning, but I think we've endured the blizzard. Back to you, Paul.